If you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. That's a guarantee. That's not optional.
Welcome back to part 2 of Politics, Economics, the Struggle to Survive in America. And it's a continuation of Professor Eddie Glaude. I'm just going to get right into it.
And I'll say this, and I'll take the hit on it. There are communities that have had to bear the brunt of America confronting, white Americans confronting the danger of their innocence. And it happens every generation. So somehow we have to kind of, oh my God, is this who we are? And just again, here's another generation of babies. Think about it, a 2-year-old had his bones broken by 2 parents trying to shield him from being killed. A woman who has been married to this man for as long as I've been on the planet almost, lost her husband. For what? And so what we know is that the country has been playing politics for a long time on this hatred. We know this. So it's easy for us to place it all on Donald Trump's shoulders. It's easy for us to place Pittsburgh on his shoulders. It's easy for me to place Charlottesville on his shoulders. It's easy for us to place El Paso on his shoulders. This is us. And if we're going to get past this, we can't blame it on him. He's a manifestation of the ugliness that's in us. I've had the privilege of growing up in a tradition that didn't believe in the myths and the legends because we had to bear the brunt of them. Either we're going to change, Nicole, or we're going to do this again and again, and babies are going to have to grow up without mothers and fathers, uncles and aunts, friends, while we're trying to convince white folk to finally leave behind a history that will maybe, or embrace a history that might set them free from being white. Finally.
What else?
Lord help us. See?
Hey, you see the passion? Because he understands. He understands. It's perilous dealing with these individuals because they don't want to acknowledge their history. He says that to their face because you live in a system of white supremacy that gives them that illusion of this false sense that, they pull themselves up by their bootstrap. That welfare wasn't there for them. It was for everybody else. It's that illusion that they was fighting these particular wars in Europe, and it was for freedom, or the wars in the Middle East, it was for freedom, or the treacherousness and the deception and the thievery of all what they did here on the North American continent and the South American continent, and the plundering that they're continuing right now throughout the Caribbean. See, it's convenient for them to live in this fairy tale. It's convenient because they can sit back there, wash their hands and say, hey, man, that's what's fascinating about living here in America. Right now, we're still dropping bombs over there in the Middle East, what they call North Africa. They're still dropping bombs. At the same time, they're simultaneously trying to overthrow the government of Venezuela. And embargoes and economic sanctions on governments of Cuba and Iran. This is what's happening while we simultaneously talk about mental illness. You ever notice how it's always mental illness with these white kids? When they walk in and murder all these people. But when it's come to people who look like me, you never heard that mention of mental illness. Chicago goes on. You never heard Trump mention mental illness. You never hear him say that. California, the drive-bys, they don't call that mental illness. I'm from Miami Gardens. It's constant murdering down there. Do you call that mental illness? No, you don't. But it's mental illness when it comes to someone who looks like Donald Trump. And once again, did he not say, don't put this on Donald Trump? Because it's not Donald Trump. This is not Donald Trump. I'm from the Ronald Reagan administration, that era. I grew up during the Richard Nixon time, the Jimmy Carter time. My father's a product of Lyndon Baines Johnson and JFK. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Eisenhower. Truman. All of these individuals. The first 10 presidents of the United States were slaveholders. Every Supreme Court justice up until the ratification of the 13th Amendment was guaranteed, allegedly, that there would never be slavery in America, were slaveholders. Do you understand what I mean? When you live in a nation where the original founding fathers were all slaveholders, yet there was crafted documentation that said all men are created free with inalienable rights. Do you understand that? So when you're constantly fed this, when it's constantly fed to you, you believe in that mythology. You believe in it. You believe that the Egyptians are white. That's what you will believe. You will really believe that. Then when you say, hey, man, do you know Egypt is in Africa? Nah, Egypt ain't in Africa. You know how many times I have to, but that's a problem that we all have, because on my previous episode, I explained Black people view everyone else through the lens of white supremacy. That's why Black people will argue down that the Egyptians were Caucasians. They will argue down. Egypt is not in Africa. And don't even understand that's a European name. So here it is, 2019. And once again, a young white man then walked inside buildings and murdered people. Murder people. And you know, I always say, I would love if they had cameras and videos when these alleged so-called settlers were stepping foot here in the North American continent. But can you imagine what it was like when they was murdering the Native Americans? Can you imagine what it was like when the Battle of Bull Run? Can you imagine what it was like when Custer went up there and he surrounded them and he just murdered them down because they had the Gatling gun? I'm shooting at you with a goddamn bow and arrow and you have a automatic artillery and you're dropping bombs on me. Can you imagine what it was like? Now, we can't imagine it because they don't even want to talk about it. So it's always glossed over. That's why when you read the history books and you talk about Black people in America, it just mysteriously goes from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Act. They forget to mention Jamestown. Yeah, they talk about Europeans touch a foot in Jamestown, Virginia. They failed to mention with some cargo that look like me. You understand? They forget that. And don't forget Angela. That was the woman that they named. And then you transform and you go forward. You go from 1619, and then you go to the War of Independence, when they was fighting against the British. What was that for? You know, according to the history books, that always talks about some damn throwing tea and ain't want to pay taxes. Could have been that it had more to do with slavery. You know, could have been multiple events that could have been. But one thing I do know, and I've learned living here in America, everything is about race. Everything. And my comrades and people who I work with consistently, I would say, man, you need to stop talking about that. Why do you always want to talk about race? Because that's what America's all about. And it is a race. The sad thing is, Black people, we don't know we're in a race. That's what's so amazing about the Matrix. The white folks already know it's a race. That's why they at on the 99.5 yard line. And we still in the goddamn dugout. We ain't even on the field because we don't acknowledge it. We don't acknowledge it. That's what was so fascinating about watching Professor Cloud. He told them, this is as American as apple pie, mass murder. It's as American as apple pie. How many people was murdered in Iraq? How many people was murdered in Vietnam? How many do you think? How many people do you think was murdered in Nicaragua and America over through that government? What about Honduras? How many people was murdered? We don't talk about that. But I guarantee if I ask you how many Americans was killed in Vietnam, what did I tell you? It was 56,000 plus. Well, it was over 3 million Vietnamese. 3.5 million Vietnamese was murdered. Over almost close to 2 million Iraqis have been murdered from the first Gulf War to the second Gulf War. Can't tell you how many Assyrians was murdered since America started bottom of the Libya. See, that's what Professor Glau was trying to explain to him. Murder is so common in America that they gloss over it. What we get ready to do? If you're in your home right now, you got your air conditioning. You don't got to worry about no bombs and nobody flying airplanes around your home. You ain't got to worry about that. You ain't got to worry about your kids' school getting bombed. But if you live in Detroit, Michigan, you got to worry about drinking good water. I'm sorry, Flint, Michigan. You have to worry about drinking some damn good water. Now you have it in Newark, New Jersey. They can't drink water. But at the same time, what you watch the television. Oh, it's an election going on. Oh, and Joe Biden, he's the most electable. Do you hear them talk about any of these issues that I might bring up on politics, economics, and the struggle to survive in America? No, you won't. You know why? Because that matrix is powerful. And they know that the true white supremacists that you never see will put a stop to it. Will put a stop to it. And that's what's so crazy about living in a nation like this. It's like it's upside down. And they really make you think that you're crazy when you highlight these specific events. And I want you to understand something. If it wasn't for the Civil Rights Act of 1965 or the Voters' Rights Act, can you imagine what America would look like? So when they act like these situations where these individuals, these young white kids just go out there and just murder tens of people, and they act like it's something new. Well, just remember what it was like after the Civil War. Remember what it was like when the police just went through and murdered black people at any moment. Or when we went through the courts and they just rubber stamped us and sent us as convict lease to go and build the roads and the highway system in America. Or when we just tried to go to schools, what white folks would do. Now, I want you to see, when you always remember, when you watch my shows, pay attention to these videos and these portraits and these pictures that I put on here, because it's a reflection. And when you think of the 1960s, and we was trying to get the right to vote, remember that was police officers. That was police officers beating us up with them billy clubs and putting those German shepherds on us and using water hoses on young kids and women. I want you to always remember that. So what's happening now is, now they flip it. See, that's how white supremacy works. See, they always have these so-called boogeymen to really run the game on the poor white people, because these poor white people don't even realize what's happening to them. You weren't working in them fields, we was. And then when we stopped working in them fields after the Civil Rights Act and started working in warehouses and factories, they needed somebody to go and work in them damn fields. So they had to still start bringing people from all across South and Central America. After they destabilized those regions, you gotta remember the United States Manifest Destiny, the Monroe Doctrine, stipulated that they will control everything in the Western Hemisphere. The Western Hemisphere has been controlled by these individuals. This is not something that you just make up. So when Professor Eddie Glaude sat there and started basically screaming at them to make them understand, this is America. What he was hoping that they would sit there and open their eyes. But I'm guarantee you, those individuals on that television screen, $1 million salaries. They don't see none of that stuff he talking about. You know why? Because when they leave, they're going to go to their apartment in Manhattan with some doorman that's probably from Nicaragua, somewhere in some part of Africa. They're going to probably ride there in their Uber with someone who graduated college with thousands of dollars in debt. And they're going to walk up to that beautiful apartment. And they're going to close that door and they're going to live in a different world. Because the realities of living in America is the haves have always lived in a different world than the have-nots. The sad thing is the have-nots think that one day they're going to be up there with the haves. That's the gangster game of America. Ain't never been a bigger gangster than America. I don't care what nobody say. You can talk about the Romans all you want to. The Romans weren't no global superpower. The closest before America was the British, and that didn't last long. America's a true global superpower, and it's gangster because they're everywhere. And this ideology is global. It's global. It's so global, we can't fathom it because we in our own little boxes. So we think Everything that we live around is so important. We don't even understand what's going on. So to go back to Professor Cloud and those individuals that was on that set with him, it's sad because they went to college. And Barnes and Noble, a Google search will enlighten them on this. They can learn about that reparations that the slaveholders got in Washington, D.C. During the Civil War, and how the slaves were free, but the slaveholders was given $300. Just imagine that. See, this was gangster. They was given $300 because we was property. And the United States government wanted to repair their loss. Now, the slaves didn't get anything after centuries of backbreaking labor. Wall Street, we don't even want to talk about Wall Street and all them dead bodies they didn't find. You got to remember, Wall Street was built because they were selling us on Wall Street. But that's not talked about. You know, they tell that's the financial capital of the United States of America. They never tell you how it came into existence, in which I wish Professor Eddie Glaude would, but I understand. It's called self-preservation. Self-preservation. And that's what's so gangster about living in America. Meritorious manumission makes sure that black men and black women stay on point. Don't veer off it because you want those papers. So, you know, you got those fancy plaques. You know, I got my master's degree, my PhD. We love those fancy titles. But they always neglect to add that meritorious manumission papers they got from not talking about this, which is why when we do extend to those different economics stratus in America, we forget. It's not that we forget. We don't want to. We don't want to. So we don't even talk to our kids about that. We won't. We're afraid. They've made us afraid. And I was happy that Professor Glaude, he knew that there could be ramifications for what he said, but no matter what, he said it. That was very PG. But he said it. And I have no problem with that. I'm not in his pockets. I don't know how his finances are. But one thing I do know, and one thing I'm going to cherish, is this First Amendment. I'm going to cherish the First Amendment because it gives me that right to say what I'm saying. It gives me that right. Now, you can feel indifferent about it, but you can't run from the facts. The facts are these situations, this mass murder is constantly going on in America. It's just been illuminated because we have cameras, video recording equipment. But they had cameras back then. That's why you know so many lynchings went on in America. What about the land that we owned? They know about that too. They know about that. They know. But you know what they do know? You don't know. Because you're going to be in church on Sunday and you're going to say, God, I found a way. So while we're saying that in our churches on Sunday, they are already plotting come Monday morning to how to get that property from up underneath you, to how to continue to perpetually keep you in bondage, that debt. See, the new bondage is debt. And they know that you're not going to say anything. Why? Because your pastor has his papers in meritorious, he has his PhD in meritorious manumission. That's why you don't have pastors talking about this. You see Al Sharpton, right? You see where Reverend Al at? He on MSNBC. You see, right? Oh, you understand what I mean? Where Jesse Jackson at? These individuals received their meritorious manumission papers a long time ago. A long time ago. But it's okay. You know, we've dealt with these individuals since we've been here. Nat Turner had to deal with them. Denmark Vesey had to deal with them. Harriet Tubman definitely had to deal with them. Madam C.J. Walker had to deal with them. Marcus Garvey dealt with these individuals. Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. I'm sorry. I'm a major fan of Malcolm X, so I'm sorry about repeating that twice. But it's just so sad. But it's sad and it's refreshing at the same time because, like I say, we in that 400th year. And this marked 400 years. I'm not a religious individual. I don't believe in no signs, but I do believe in karma. And I do believe in an awakening. And that awakening is him. Yes, and I want you to understand something. We can't think that the Supreme Court is going to change anything. Because as I mentioned earlier, the Supreme Court was filled with slaveholders up until the abolition of slavery, and that was the ratification of the 13th Amendment in 1865. Do you understand that? So when we think that we're going to get justice from the Supreme Court, these are the same individuals that in the 1866 Civil Rights Act. See, most black people don't even understand that the first Civil Rights Act for black folks was 1866. And it stipulated that we are to receive everything that white men receive. Now, on a side note, they get ready to attack that because you have Byron Allen, as you know, suing the cable companies because they refused to put his network on the cable lines. See, this is how gangster America is. They get you looking one way, but simultaneously, they have their fingers and their tentacles everywhere else. But they know that you're not going to know. That's why it's not on the television screens. This is how gangster America is. Hey, I just wanted to give y'all a little piece today, that's all. Once again, this is Politics, Economics, to Struggle to Survive in America. Jerrald President. Peace.
The dark brown shades of my skin only add color to my tears. Oh, that splash against my hollow bones that rocks my soul. Looking back over my false dreams that I once knew, wondering why my dreams never came true. Is it because I'm black? Somebody tell me, what can I do? Oh Lord, oh, something is holding me back. Is it because I'm black? Yeah. In this world of no pity, I was raised in the ghettos of the city. Yeah, oh Lord. Mama, she worked so hard to earn every penny. Yeah. Oh Lord, something is holding me back. Is it because I'm black? Like a child stealing his first piece of candy and got caught, peeping around life's corner somewhere, I got lost. Oh, something is holding me back. I wonder, is it because I'm black? Somebody tell me, what can I do? Will I survive or will I die? Oh, you keep on holding me back. Keep on holding on. Keep on picking on me. Oh, keep on holding me back. Keep on holding on. Keep on holding on. You're holding me back. somebody. I want to be somebody so bad. You see, I want diamond rings and things like you do. And I want to drive Cadillac cars. Oh, I want to be somebody so bad. But you keep on putting your foot on me. And I believe I can break away and be somebody somehow, in some way. You see, I heard somebody say one time, you can make it if you try. Oh, and some of us, we're trying so hard. We're trying so hard. I want you to know that I don't speak for myself, but I speak for y'all too right now. You see, if you're half white, light brown skinned, or high yellow, you're still black. So we all got to stick together right now. This I want to say to you, my sisters and my brothers. Right on, sister. Right on, brother. Dig this. If we keep on pushing, y'all, oh, we got to make it a little bit further. We got to make it a little further. All we got to do is try, try, try. And some of us, we're trying so hard. We're trying so hard. We're trying so hard. We're trying so hard to be somebody. We're trying so hard, although they're holding us back. And that's the reason that they're doing us like that. You know what? It is. I believe it's because we're black. But hey, we can't stop now. We can't stop now. We got to keep on, keep on, keep on, keeping on. We got to keep on, keeping on. I know and I know and I know that you know that I know it ain't right. It ain't right, it ain't right that they hold us back. They're holding us back.